Today we are covering 7 breaking developments reshaping the global order. Iran signals it wants no conflict with Muslim neighbors while simultaneously firing long-range missiles for the first time. The US, after bombing Iran, quietly lifts oil sanctions to cool the markets. Ukraine recovers nearly 400 square kilometers after Russia loses Starlink access. Ukraine's foreign minister promises strikes on Russian soil will only intensify. Trump dismisses Ukraine's role in the Middle East and says Zelensky is harder to deal with than Putin. And Iran tells Japan its ships can pass through the Strait of Hormuz, confirming the blockade is selective, not total. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian used Eid al-Fitr to send a direct message to neighboring Muslim countries, stating Tehran seeks no conflict with them and calling them brothers. He argued the only beneficiary of Islamic divisions is, in his words, the Zionist entity. This comes as over 2,000 Iranians have been killed since the US and Israel began their attacks on February 28th. On the same day, Iran escalated dramatically by firing 2 ballistic missiles with a 4,000-kilometer range at the joint US-UK base in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. Israeli military chief Eyal Zamir confirmed this was the first time Iran used long-range missiles in this conflict, warning that Berlin, Paris, and Rome are now within direct range. Separately, Iranian missiles struck the Israeli cities of Dimona and Arad, injuring dozens, including children, just 13 kilometers from Israel's secret nuclear reactor. On the economic front, the U.S. Treasury issued a 30-day temporary license on March 20th, suspending sanctions on Iranian oil purchases at sea. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said releasing roughly 140 million barrels of Iranian oil stockpiled by China could quickly ease supply pressure. Notably, Russia's oil revenues surged by an extra $6.9 billion during the 2 weeks of U.S.-Iran fighting. Ukraine's foreign minister Andriy Sybiha declared that Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory will continue growing in scale and precision, calling them Ukraine's own sanctions against the Russian war machine. On March 21st, Ukrainian forces struck the Saratov oil refinery supplying fuel to the Russian army. The biggest battlefield shift in years came after SpaceX cut Russian forces off from Starlink in February. Ukraine recaptured approximately 380 square kilometers in the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions as Russian coordination collapsed to roughly 60% effectiveness, forcing troops back to radio communications that Ukraine actively began intercepting. In a 15-minute call with MSNBC, President Trump dismissed Ukraine's contributions in the Middle East as purely political and said Zelensky is harder to deal with than Putin. Zelensky confirmed 228 Ukrainian specialists are deployed in Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia advising on drone defense, and that Ukraine has received 11 formal security assistance requests from countries facing Iranian threats. Finally, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told Japanese media that Tehran is not closing the Strait of Hormuz to all nations, only to enemy countries that are attacking Iran. He stated that Japanese vessels are welcome to pass and that Tehran is ready to coordinate safe passage. This is a significant signal. Japan imports over 90% of its crude oil from the Middle East and depends heavily on that strait. Iran is using selective access as a geopolitical instrument, rewarding neutral countries and isolating its adversaries without formally closing the waterway to the entire world.